and that should, by the press of that button, make us live on YouTube. And in the meantime, Bob, you've been on with us. It was I was looking, it was like almost exactly a year ago today, which is crazy. It was November 6th, so off by a week and change. But yeah, it's a wild deal.
A lot of things have changed.
No kidding.
No kidding. I think that's kind of the way the top of the show comes off.
2020 hits again.
No
What did you actually do the math on what day it is, Rusty? Because it's like March 251st or something.
Oh man, I think it was you who told me that joke the first time a few weeks ago, and I dug it. So I was like, "Yep, I'm using that." That was good. Yeah. So Bob, we'll do the normal stuff now with Zoom. The audio shouldn't cut out as much during the intro, so you might actually hear me this time doing our intro and reading off names and blah blah blah. But jumping into the 21st century in terms of technology here. So should be good to go there. And then, yeah, after that, we'll bring you on as usual. You'll hear me say that if nothing else. And then, I don't know, we'll just talk about what's been going on with you and what's been going on in NASCAR and do our thing as usual. If you find yourself down in some long story, just keep on keeping on. We got no agenda, especially in the off season. We have super duper no agenda. So yeah, I know there's other shows that will kind of take a break during the off season for a bit, and I don't know, we just like doing it, so we're like, let's just do it anyway. And if we end up with like 15 minutes of a show, it's more than zero of a show, so have at it.
I'm sure it'll be enjoyed by all.
At least by us, and that's who matters, right? And the PETM posse.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, are y'all ready to get started then? Sherwin?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, let's do it. Bob, you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, if I disappear for a moment, then I'll be right back with you. So, with that said, here we go. We're recording now. Welcome, y'all! That's right. This is the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Air Racing Podcast, episode number 268. It's Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace in the PTM Podcast Studio in Atlanta, Georgia. As always, this podcast is sponsored by you. That's right. You go to patreon.com/PTM. Join the Watch Your Drink Club for as little as $1 a month. Get that free koozie and some stickers. Best part is every cent this year we're once again donating to sponsoring drivers. So join the PTM Posse today. Be a part of the sport you love. This week's show, as always, brought to you by our official sponsors at that $5 and up per month level. They are Aaron Bearden, Robert Kevin, Coleman, Clam, Eric Kevin, Ryan Kiefer, Patrick Clear, Jeff Brown, Brandon Crowd, Kathy McDonald, Brandon Carl, Rika Porter, Julie Bosley, Eddie Greer III, Younker Motorsports, David Mullins, Patrick Johnson, Brett Morris, Crystal Smoke, Fred Rosato, Chad Knapp, Stacey Coleman, Lisa Chinana, Rick Houston, Sarah Anbari, Evan Roller, Matthew Bishop, Matthew Camper, Harry Bolzania, Les Miller, and Jumpy Bob, and AJ Evangelista. I like our new sponsor there, Sherwin. With AJ Evangelista gives me a pop at the end there, and AJ Evangelista. So.
Yeah, I wonder how many times you can do that read before Jumpy Bob's going to be in the DMs going, "Hey man, I thought you were going to give me last billing." We got to give the new folks their due.
Yeah, we got to do that.
Evangelista's there's some sophistication with that name.
Yeah, and like I said, it's got that pop at the end that really helps. Well, I've already talked to you, but from the PTM North Carolina studio number 23. No, welcome, Pregame Engineer Andrew Sherwin. How you been, man?
That's right. Formerly of Atlanta, now of Morrisville, North Carolina.
That's right.
Let's giddy up on some off season.
Let's do that. And with us tonight, very special guest for the second time on the PTM podcast. Former owner of the 95 Toyota Camry for LFR Levine Family Racing and owner of WRL General Contractors on Twitter at BLevine. It's Bob Levine. Bob, what's happening?
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me on.
It's great to have you on again. Thanks again for joining. And I realized I got your Twitter handle wrong when I put it up on the tweet. So, oops, that was my bad. But should be all squared away now on here. If I mess it up, later on. Oh, well.
Littering in.
Littering in. As I'm
It'll
sitting
be
here
fine.
going through this.
This is what happens sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. If we're unprofessional during the season, you ought to see us now. Oh, man. Well, Bob, you've been on the show before. You know how we start this thing. What are you drinking tonight?
Aquafina water.
Aquafina, the water. Sherwin.
He's the actual responsible one in the room, I guess.
Right. Sherwin, what you got tonight?
I did that because if it falls, it won't break.
That's a good point.
I mean, we'll probably we can tell that later.
Hate to
So
make fun of you.
I did still have a Texas beer in the fridge. So I've got
There
a
you go.
Shiner Bock.
Well done.
Figured that was topical.
There you
Very
go.
nice.
I've got from Red Hair their sticky oatmeal stout. I saw it in the aisle, and it's got a lot of stuff on it on the can. So
Wow.
yeah,
Oh yeah, the sticky stout. That's a fun one. You got to be my eyes and ears on all the fancy liquor stores in Atlanta when that nitro creamy brulee from Southern Tier shows up. We gotta have some of that.
That stuff that is dessert in a bottle. I'll tell you what.
Pretty much.
Well, Bob. Well, I'll start with this. Y'all might see I'm in my jacket right now. I feel like I'm having like a silent battle of the wills with my wife over whether or not to turn on the heater because it's supposed to be like in the 70s this weekend, but right now it's in the house. In the house, it's like 64 degrees and falling. So I'm just sort of bundled up right here, and she's downstairs. She's got a big old blanket on, and we're both staring at it. None of us has said anything yet, but it's like, who's going to say first? All right, listen, I'm cold.
Oh, you're in a standoff.
Right.
Mexican kind or the Utah kind? No, I'm kidding.
Sherwin, what's the weather right now in old Mooresville?
Well, this area, North Carolina, is very similar to Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be in the 30s. I came home to a 64-degree apartment because I had turned the heat off yesterday or last night. So, yeah, it was pretty chilly here today.
Yeah. And now, Bob, you're not too far from there, are you?
Where's that?
Mooresville, or are you further away?
No, we're in fact, right now, I'm in Oklahoma.
Oh, there you go.
We have a place on the Red River in Oklahoma. We've been back in Texas for most of the year because of COVID and not going into any races. But right now, it was nice here at our place today on the Red River. It was probably in the low 70s, a little overcast, sunshiny. We were able to put a fire in the fireplace. I'm sitting here with a pair of shorts on in front of the fireplace now. So we're right on the verge. Sharon likes the fire, so we watch the fire.
Hey, happy life, or happy wife, happy life.
Right?
Amen. That's exactly right.
They all like fires.
Well, we do have a fireplace. I would not be surprised if I smelled a fire here in maybe like 5 or 10 minutes that the wife lit one up and said, all right, I'm cold, but not turning on the heat yet. So be it. Oh, man. Sherwin, you had a little bit of some drama leading up to the show this evening.
What did I do this time?
I don't know. You pulled a Sherwin, right?
Oh yeah. I forgot. Well, I couldn't remember if we was recording yet or not on the YouTuber. Yeah. I mean, right before I'm already dialed into Zoom. Like I'm waiting. I'm supposed to be the responsible co-host because you had a quick errand you had to run, and I knocked a drink off the counter, and there's shattered glass everywhere. But I didn't have any time to clean that up. So no barefoot in the kitchen for a little while.
I like the dedication to the show. It's like, you know what? This broken glass all over the place. Well, that's just got to wait.
I got the big chunks, but there's, you know how glass be doing.
Right. Oh, man. Well, Bob, the last time we talked, and we said it in the very brief pre-show that we started with, was November 6th of last year on PETM 219. Here we are at 268. So almost 50 episodes on the nose. What a different world we live in than 12 months ago, huh?
Yeah, it really is. COVID's been a major factor, all around the world. And so with work and the economy, even in our elections, COVID has played a role, unfortunately. And so it's played a role in us and our construction firm, and therefore it affected our race team. And it was very unfortunate. So life changes and we have to change with it, like the glass on the floor. We got to go with it and deal with it.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. So last time we were talking about how the team started and everything, and so I went back and listened, and I really liked a quote that you gave, and maybe this one was just off the cuff, but you had said, "I rode in on ignorance, and I stayed on hard-headedness." I'm curious what your what the end of that sentence sounds like today.
Probably similar. Us guys who are competitive, sometimes we don't know when to say when. I've thought back over the 10 years and looked at the change in NASCAR and looked at the reason we got into racing and helping a driver get a ride, David Starr, in the Cup Series. And it was strictly for that. I had no other reason. I wasn't addicted to NASCAR. I enjoyed NASCAR out of college. Sharon and I were moved by DuPont to South Carolina, and I won't say the year. I'll say years ago. And we actually started watching and going to the races at Rockingham and Darlington and Charlotte, and seeing Richard and Bobby Allison, Donnie Allison, and Cale Yarborough, and the foundation of NASCAR run, and it was enjoyable. I like big engines and fast cars, but got away from it, and so it was really just cruising along, working on our business for years and years. And in around 2000, my daughter, she's a car freak also. She got back interested in this young fella had come up and just was a rookie in NASCAR. And she brought it to my attention. Hey, I think this guy's going to be really good. And, okay, who is it? And his name was Jimmy Johnson. And so I said, okay, we'll watch him. And I had gotten my wife had actually given me a birthday present to take the driving experience at Texas Motor Speedway, and a 10 lap. And went, had a great time, enjoyed the speed, got to know Mike Starr, who's David Starr's uncle. Mike ran the Team Texas for years and years. And I started going over there regularly and driving with Mike and practicing at the Speedway, and enjoyed it. And little by little started watching it. And we bought a couple of, about 4 Formula Mazdas that we put on a road course down in Crescent below Fort Worth, and family would go and drive there on the road course, myself and my daughter, Michael, my grandson, and Sharon, and for weekends. And so we liked that as a family get together, and got to know David through Mike. And so it just kind of, we've sponsored a truck race and Xfinity race for him. We bought a condo at Texas Motor Speedway in 2010, the year before we started racing, and
that's amazing.
Just got involved and kind of just watching it, and no real desire to do anything else except David started looking for somebody to drive for or get a few rides, and everybody wanted him to, hey, bring some money and essentially buy a ride. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, I'm not into that, because you don't know what you're buying, you know what kind of equipment you're paying for. So my wife and I were driving back from our place at the lake at the Possum Kingdom in October of 2010. And I just said, I think I'll start a Cup team for David and get him where he can get a ride in NASCAR, because if we sponsor him, we're gonna do this. We're gonna spend X number of dollars, but I'm a control freak. But if we do it, then we can control the cars that we given him. And only thing I knew about is decent cars. So my grandson and I, we flew up to North Carolina and met with the Roush people and RCR people and after a couple of trips, we decided on the Fords, and we got into racing strictly for David, and put the team together and learned about. I started making calls to NASCAR because I knew absolutely nothing about how to get in it, who, what, when, where. In fact, stupid me, I walked out of Roush after making the deal to buy chassis and bodies and parts and pieces. And as I'm walking out the door, I thought, wait a minute, I need a crew chief. You know anybody that's, a crew chief? And they said, yeah, we got this guy, and give you his number. I called him from the parking lot and just said, hey, I'm Bob. I'm starting a new cup team, and I need a crew chief. Well, okay, where's your shop? Well, I ain't got one.
Wait, I need a shop too?
Yeah, and okay, people. I got people too. I ain't got tools. So this was Wally Rogers, who became a good friend, still is a good friend. And after 2 weeks, I'd convinced him to do this deal because he was working for RPM at the time. And so we found and rented a little spot in Rick Crawford's truck shop over by Alan Kowicki's old shop, the shop we eventually bought and fixed up. And we rented a couple little bays in the back. And the first car we got was David Reagan's backup Phoenix car. And in March, 1st of March, in order to run the race in Texas, 1st of April. And we found people, and I started making calls of how to get the car entered and how do I get a number and all those things that you don't ever think about or so stupid. Just had to have a logo, had to have a car scheme, had to have driver's suits, had to have over the walls, I was going to rent a hauler, and that didn't work out. And I found an old one from Menard that the RPM had that a fella Canadian had bought, and I think the check had bounced or something. So I made them an offer and got a hauler. And then I realized, well, crap, I got to have a tractor now to pull this thing. And found a guy down in Atlanta, truck sales, and got a tractor. And then it's got to get it registered, got to be able to pull it across the country, got to register with DOT. So all these things I'm learning as I go.
Yeah.
And looking back on it is like, boy, you really were stupid.
I wonder in all that, how I suspect I have an idea of the answer, but how long did it take before you were over budget?
Well, we did pretty good because we didn't have a budget.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't smart enough to know what it cost.
Yeah.
So, we bought used cars and parts and pieces and put them together. So I spent time up there going back and forth and helping and learning. But we were in my only, I guess you could say, criteria was no matter how fast we ran, we were going to look good going slow if we were slow.
Yeah.
And because we were going to be professional in NASCAR is just what I believe we needed to do is look professional. Mm-hmm. And then we would little by little figure out how to do it better. And so I got Sam Bass, had met Sam before I got into racing, and Sam did all the design for me and became a friend. And, his place was right near our shop, and did some designs that we still use today or did use up until Phoenix.
Yeah.
And so met a lot of good people. And so we just, because we were running part-time, we could kind of control the cost really. Mm-hmm. It wasn't mandatory. Oh, you're going to run 36 races. And because of, I was the one that was really learning how to race. All these other guys that were hired, they knew what they were doing, and it was just Bob. So that's why little by little, we actually run 8 races our first year and actually made 4 of them to qualify to get in. Wow. That was our first 4. And So we were very fortunate in Texas. We actually backed off. And boy, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was intimidating. It was crazy, me walking in that garage as a brand new team owner running our first race. Very intimidating with the names in the sport. And I'm not one of those people that are starstruck by this person or that person, but just the aura of the racetrack and the engines and everything that was going on was mind-boggling. The inspection process, all of that was my first time. I followed the car through and watched what was going on, and completely different than our inspections today, but it was a onerous process, and I learned little by little. But there was probably 48 or 49 cars to make that race, a field of 43, and we actually made the race. And I don't remember where we finished. I remember David putting into a turn 4 wall after about lap 80 something, I believe it was. And so I was more concerned with my car.
Yeah.
It's like, it was really a nice looking car because it looked, except for it being a Toyota this past Texas race, it had that paint scheme on it. It was really what I thought was a cool looking car, but it was flat sided on the right side. And when I went to the garage to meet it, it was a sad day for Bob, because our very first race, we'd crashed and killed our car, and here we go.
Yeah.
So it was, just a learning experience. Like I said, stupidity, no budget, because we'd gotten in to help somebody, and I knew I could afford it because we were only going to run 8 races. And it just kind of, at the end of that first year, I realized that I was kind of hooked on the competition and wanted to do better.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to tell David I was going to look for another driver, and he become a good friend, and that was difficult, but we got through it. And I hired Scott Speed, and Scott had run for Red Bull and some other people, and in fact, he had run for Dusty Whitney the year before, and Dusty had come and talked to me. I believe it was in Chicago, one of the races we were at, and he said, I'm not coming back next year. And I said, yeah, well, Scott really qualifies well. He gets you in the race. He says, yeah. He says, you ought to try to hire him because he'll get you in the race. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to Scott, and we hired him, and kept him for a year and a piece. And, again, I don't remember how many races we run our second year. I think we run a couple more. And then Scott got to be a handful with Wally. So I was going to lose Wally or Scott. And I thought Wally was more important to me than Scott. And so we finished out that year with Reed Sorensen, ran some races for us. And Reed's a great guy. And so that was the end of our third year. And so it was, it just kind of was building a little bit, and me getting, for lack of a better term, I was in the quicksand a little bit more the third year, a little bit more the fourth year. We hired Michael McDowell. And so it was me learning the business. And so I was the one that was holding us back, if anything, because again, we had no budget. Knew about what it cost us to put cars together, because I'm kind of fanatic on knowing what the cost is. But going in, I didn't know what the cost is, because you can't find out those things about coming in NASCAR. Hey, what does that cost? Nobody's going to tell you what it costs to run a car. Mm-hmm. It's pretty tight lip in NASCAR. And nobody wants to admit the stupid money we're spending.
Yeah.
And so coming in, you either got to know somebody on the inside. And if you look at the people in the sport, it's generally people who've been in the sport, come back and get a car, want to get a car, or go in with somebody who's been in racing. Very few people are stupid enough like myself just to come in and say, hey, let's go do this.
Mm-hmm. So reminiscing like you've done on that first race in Texas in 2011 and the feelings walking in the garage and the what do I do? Where do I put my hands? All that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fear, overwhelmed, intimidated is probably the biggest word. Intimidation is absolutely amazing. It's like, what do I do? Mm-hmm. You know, standing there looking like a wooden pole. You know, it's about what you felt like.
Yeah. How did that?
Everybody's going around. They know what they're doing, and I'm standing there wondering like you said, what I should be doing.
Yeah, yeah. How did that feeling evolve over the course of 10 years? At what point do you walk in with a little bit of swagger, like, "Hey, boys, y'all see where LFR finished last week?"
You know, I discussed that with someone else here a while back, and it really wasn't until we went full time that where I was at the garage every week that I felt comfortable walking into the garage as like, we belong here. Mm-hmm. And so it took over 5 years to get that feeling of, okay, we belong here. We paid our dues. And, you know, I generally know what's going on because I had become good friends with Lynn and Eddie Woods, two of my best friends, because they were running part-time also. And we parked beside one another in the garage a lot. And so we spoke a lot, and they shared a lot with me and taught me a lot. And I would bounce ideas off of them and drivers and what about this and what do you think about that? And so they were very good at sharing that stuff with me. So those are probably the only two that I talked to for 5 years. Uh-huh. But it was probably after or during that 5th year, or really the 6th year when we went full time, that I felt comfortable in the garage of knowing that we weren't where we wanted to be, but we were on the way. We had a plan, we had budgets, we had all those type of things that you really ought to have. Because until the first full year, I didn't worry about a whole lot of things. The accounting of it, you know, we knew the cost at the end of the year. Okay, we knew what we spent, and that was what we was going to spend. And but once we went full time, because I'm a accounting and finance major, I wanted to know, okay, what are we committing to here? And then we started the nuts and bolts and counting it, and actually hiring an accountant to work at the shop, you know, little by little, getting those parts and pieces that you need.
Yeah. You know, thinking about if we fast forward to Texas this year, and we've already talked about how a little more swagger in the garage and walking around, but, you know, we knew at this point that this was the last race at Texas. You ran the same paint scheme, that pretty scheme you were talking about before, designed by the late Sam Bass, and hats off to Sam. And what was the feeling at Texas this year? Not only, you know, leading up to, but then getting a third place finish there. I mean, it had to be a maybe bittersweet moment, but at least something that, you know, something to hang your hat on, huh?
Yeah, the only, you know, missing part was this year from after Phoenix. That was Phoenix was the last race that Sharon and I was able to go to. Mm-hmm. In fact, we didn't even go and watch the race from our condo in turn 2. It was like, I didn't want to be there. If I couldn't be there with the guys, I didn't want to be there. Mm-hmm. So I had my computer with SMT on it that we follow our car and look at all the parameters but it was, we've had such a difficult time with good finishes at Texas. We'd have bring fast cars and something happened. That yes, it was to get a third place because with WRL and customers and bringing clients and architects and owners and the buildings we're building would come and host there, and never doing well, it sure makes you humble. because you're not going to brag about your race team. And this year there was nobody there, essentially. Some of our clients were actually in the stands and texting me and taking pictures of our car as they come in turn one or wherever they were sitting. So that was, satisfaction, but it was just, we were proud. We've been proud of our team for quite some time and of the people that we put together. But finishing up in Texas with a third place finish was probably the word you use is really close. Bittersweet, because it wasn't something we wanted to do, but in order to protect our other company and people in Texas with the COVID, it is something we had to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. By all measures on the track, LFR has been the Cinderella story, almost the story that people talk about when they're talking about grassroots racing and folks starting up a team out of, like you said, out of nowhere, not even knowing, well, I need to buy a trailer. Now I need a truck to tow it. Now I need a license to use a truck and all that. And 20th in points this year, 7 top 10s, improvement every year across the last at least 5 years. It's incredible what LFR has been able to do over the last, like I said, about 5 years. What does it take to succeed in NASCAR as a team like yours?
We used our similar culture that we built our organization in Texas over for 41 years. It's just like our name implies, it's a family.
Mm-hmm.
The culture of you treat people the way you want to be treated. You treat people like family, which means you're going to discipline. You're going to hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. You're going to attack the problem and you're not going to attack the person. And honesty, integrity, all those things that we believe in, and the way we deal with people and the way we pay our bills. And, that's one thing we pride ourselves in, because Cher and I have really gone through some difficult times in our 41 years of being in business. And the things that happened first was bills were paid, whether we could eat or not, bills were paid. Mm-hmm. And we lived under our means entirely, live in the same house we have for the past 33 years. And that's why we were able to race. We saved. And, so that was a blessing. But I like being around our people. I like being in the shop. The two things I missed most this year was being in the shop and being at the track with our guys. Yeah, they provided a suite for us owners if we wanted to be there, but I had no reason to be in a suite with another owner. If I was going to be at the track, it was going to be at our hauler with our guys and at the pit box, on the pit wall out front, watching the car, watching the people as they worked around the pit box and learning something, what we need to do, what we need to improve, how can we be better, and just wanting to improve, and then analyzing not what you did right, but analyzing what you did wrong and how you could be better. Anybody can come back and, talk about, oh yeah, we did this, that, and the other well. Okay, that ought to last for about a couple minutes. Now let's talk about what we need to do better. And everybody, and not running people down, but talking about here's what we got to do better. So again, picking on the problem, not picking on the person.
Yeah.
And you pat them on the back, you catch them doing something right, and then when you got to, you pat them lower. It's just that way. The people in your shop know what to expect. You expect only the best out of them. And over the years, we've had people leave us early on in our team's history to go get better pay, which we knew, and we did the best we could, and better benefits. But then this year, last year, and the year before, we started getting people back after they've gone to other organizations. And I've always been friends with people at various organizations that work for, still, Twitter and talk to, but a bunch of them we got back and made great people, and they went to other organizations, learned, came back. So our biggest resource is our people, no matter how much money you got to spend, but it still takes money to get those good people. That's the bottom line. You can say people matter. Yes, they do, but they also got to make a good living in our sport. And so working up and being able to get to where we could start paying those things and getting a few sponsors and not just out of our pocket has helped tremendously in building our team, we had the culture, but it just took a while to get it going, and word of mouth, people wanting to come. And I think I see if I can, the picture behind you, if I recognize, I believe that's Casey.
You got it.
And he was one of the things that kind of put in place that we were trying to be better, and getting him to come over helped tremendously, although we didn't put him in the cars that I really wanted to. Chevrolet was having difficulties. We had crew chief issues, and so he was really going to be our driver to go into the new Toyota era until he got ill, and then he retired. So we had planned on him being with us for several years, but his retirement out of the Cup Series changed that dramatically and quickly. And that's when Regan stepped in, and a year before last, and took over and finished out the last few races, or 12 or 13 maybe, that we had. But getting him kind of set the stage of, maybe, if he's over there, they're beginning to put together good enough cars that he wants to drive for them. And therefore, that person attracts another person. Mm-hmm. So, it can kind of snowball. So Casey helped out a lot, and, he's a great individual and a great driver.
So go ahead, Sherman.
Sorry, Rusty, I'm going to cut you off. I've been quiet for a while. Because I wanted to talk about this specifically, and I was glad that Bob brought it up, and I wasn't sure how deep you'd get into it, because I didn't get to meet you, Bob, when I was at Michigan, but I did get to go into your hauler when Casey was driving the car, and obviously we were paying very close attention to everything that was going on with Casey then, because he was our guy, and we knew that there was growing pains associated with racing with LFR, and that you guys were on your way, you were on a glide path to better success, and we were hoping that Casey would be that person that would get you to the next step. And, there was that constant frustration with him. But I remember being in the garage, thanks to a friend up in Michigan who got me media passes to go with him. And at the time, I believe Brad Yunker's older brother was your business manager. So that's kind of how the connection got to where I got a little closer and got to go into your hauler. But Casey jumped out of the car after our practice and threw his earbuds like he was as mad as he's ever been. And I can just remember Brad saying, "We ain't got a driver problem." So I don't know what your perspective on that was. I just wanted to share that experience that I had.
Yeah, we had issues of we had gotten a young crew chief that had come recommended. I mean, he was a car chief, and hired him, and we really should have had a experienced person with Casey. Just put it bluntly, everything that he put on Casey's car was what came off the 88 car, and that don't work. And I remember I got so upset in Texas. My grandson was in there. I was in there. Our president was in there, Casey, crew chief, car chief. And I just said, I don't really give a crap what's in the 88 car. You set the car up for this driver right here. If you can't, I can find somebody who can. And
so you said 88, and obviously we know that Hendrick played a pretty significant role in Casey being the one that ended up in your car, and Travis Mack came over from the Hendrick camp, and ultimately that didn't work out the way you thought or hoped it would. And everybody knows now that Junior just drives a race car so much different than everybody else.
Yep.
You know, just like most of the guys that are any good at it, they all have something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, so it was it was very interesting to watch that all sort of transpire, and of course,
wasn't interested being on the inside trying to figure it out.
I can only imagine that was. I mean, watching.
It was painful for Casey. We got some better. Michael McGrath, and having driven, he was able to listen to Casey and help out a lot. I got a picture with him talking to Casey at the front of the car. And so it was just a matter of, some young person coming up, and Travis is going to be a great crew chief, but it didn't work for us and what I expected, because I wanted somebody who's going to be there night and day dedicated to make that car good for our driver, because he knew how to drive. We just had to get him SFT. We had to get it all together, and we weren't. We did a terrible job doing it. The recommendations of who to put where, and that probably my lack of experience of probably asking the right questions, but it didn't take long for me to figure it out. And then, okay, we're changing direction. Here's what we're going to do. And it was, Casey knew that we were trying to look after his best interest. He also went with us when we started talking to Toyota. We all flew together down to LA and went through the TRD engine place. And, as we're walking through, all of us, Sharon and I and Michael and Casey, obviously the only one they recognize is Casey. And so it was like, whoa, is he going to come over to Toyota? So they're within that organization, it kind of knew what was going to happen. And I think he was really looking forward to that. In fact, had a 2-year contract laying on my desk that we had agreed to with Casey when he was going to retire.
Wow.
And that would have been, we would have had a hard time figuring out what we were going to do as fans at that point. Because I'd been watching Chase already since he was 10. And it wasn't like I was trying to jettison Casey or anything, but it was going to be like that balancing act of.
Oh, I understand entirely. But Casey was a fine young man, and he helped out although he didn't drive that long for us, he helped out our organization tremendously.
Bob, what's your plans for next year? What's 2021 look like?
I just told somebody today that I'm normally this time of year, I'm planning for 2021, for the next year and what we wanted to do. And we had done so much planning last year, past this year, all the way to 2021 with the next gen car, had it all figured out, we thought. And it just didn't come about. And I know there's a lot of disappointment in Ream. Ream was disappointed they wasn't coming back with us next year. I think because Procore is in the construction industry software, that caused them a lot of pain, the COVID. So they were not going to be able to come back. And they were one of our longtime sponsors. And in fact, our company still uses their substantial amount of their software and pays a lot of money, but they could not afford to come back next year. So we were going to lose that. So it was just could not turn around. We knew we had one shot at it with JGR, which was this year, of getting to our standalone status of being the second Toyota team. Even though it would have been a single car team for at least a year, we wanted to be the fifth Toyota car, the second Toyota team to stand alone, because ultimately in NASCAR alliances does not work. They do not work. They may work temporarily, they do not work long term because they just take resources, they suck it out of you, faster than you can put it in.
Wow.
Well, that's what I think what we found out with Furniture Row was that after Truex had such success, JGR just threw the gauntlet at them on how much they were going to have to pay for technology involvement, and they were like, nah, I'm freshly done with this.
Yeah, well, that's why ours had been, everything had been predicated on the next gen car. Is like, okay, we can do, and we knew if we didn't finish selling, because we still had about $3.5 million worth of sponsorship to sell for our full season this year, going into this year, but we thought we could sell it. And when COVID came, I knew we weren't going to sell it. It just was not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so that was a large hit. But the fact that we were going to have to turn around and do the same thing again next year,
right,
at best the same price, because we had an option for Christopher, and there was going to be still some changes I would have made, but it just, you can only do that for so long. And there was no way we could go to anybody else, a team. We were stuck. We had to use the JGR cars, because if you're with Toyota, that's where you get your cars from. Mm-hmm. And if you have a deal with them, that's part of the deal. And it works fine until it doesn't work.
Yeah, and that actually makes a lot of sense.
I was about to say, man.
And they were the OEM-wise, we got treated better at Toyota TRD than any other OEM, because the other two manufacturers, they already have their motherships. They have the Hendricks, the Ganassis, the RCRs, and then the Fords have the Penske's, the Roush, the Stewart Haas. And those people are actually going to get the money. And if any of the motherships, as we call them, want to give any to the little teams, they can. But for all practical purposes, unless you're one of those, quote, motherships, you're not going to get anything. So, having an alliance is just another revenue generator for the motherships.
Well, I would imagine that Tony Stewart went through some pretty similar stuff, he and Gene, when they decided to switch from Toyota to Ford, because after beating Hendrick at their own game with their own stuff, I imagine there was a very similar conversation that took place between HMS and Stewart Haas, and everybody that's Tony's Chevy all the way, he'll never leave Chevy, and they announced the Ford thing, and I said, guess what, y'all? Ford's fixing to be, or SHR is fixing to be Ford number one. They just catapulted themselves, and well, now we see the results.
Yeah, and Gene had enough wherewithal to make it happen, and Ford realized that, and we didn't have enough. We had to work our way up through, and we already had, even this year, engineers from TRD in our camp working towards next year, because they were fully behind, because I was completely transparent to Toyota that we wanted to be standalone in 2021, that we didn't need a affiliate, we didn't need alliance, we could stand on our own. You go back to last year, second half of last year was our, personally, best half a year in NASCAR. More fun with Matt. Our first year with Toyota, we just had essentially their leftover cars. Mm-hmm. We bought them and had top engines, had our own people. We got Mike Wheeler over. Wheels did a great job for us. We got Matt situated, and took a while to get him used to the different driving and, the different better cars than it ever had. And Matt was a great learner. So by the race before Sonoma, was that the Chicago race? May have been. We showed some signs of improvement, and then we went to Sonoma with a 4th place finish, and it was like, yeah,
stars aligned.
You know, you could feel it and see it. Matt was coming on. Wheels was getting his feet on the ground of knowing how Matt was driving. Michael was working with Matt on his driving and SMT, you know, on and off the throttle. I mean, there's a lot of time lost and gained on the track by, you know, on and off throttle time. But people don't understand, you know, unless you sit and looked at SMT. And that's all I do during a race. I have my iPad. I turn the sound down on the television. I have the computer with SMT on it. I follow our car and look at all the parameters, and I watch it on the animation per se on the SMT. But we started on a roll there, and actually our performance last year, you look at the top 5s, top 10s, better last year than this year. We just happened to finish 2 spots better this year, 20th instead of 22nd.
Mm-hmm. But that's a big step change too, though. I mean, when you talk about the top 20 teams, and I feel like that is a big move there, even if it's just 2 positions. But that's 2 positions over the course of a season, and looking at top 10s and top 5s and stuff this year. I mean, that's really cool to make that happen. And I kind of circling back to what we were saying before about the Cinderella story and everything. It was really cool. And Sherwin had kind of said earlier, sort of off the cuff, said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll tell you, it's not that, Bob, you would have ever owed us as fans any sort of explanation or anything, but it really has been eye-opening talking about that stuff and knowing what that is, what the factors that go into that stuff. You know, when you see the headlines, Levine Family Racing, blah, 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 and you go, how in the world or why or something's going on? What happened? And but man, it's exactly that. It makes total sense.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you one more thing, Bob, about, well, not one more thing, but just your perspective on this. Do you think Toyota's desire or TRD's desire to have, you know, another team in the sport, did you saying, hey, I'm going to vacate the sport. This is just it's not working out the way I wanted it to. And do you think that paved the way for this Jordan and Denny Hamlin deal?
It certainly gave them the opportunity because they needed it. And except for 4 people in our shop, 23 car, we'll call it, got all of our people.
Wow.
Well, I knew Wheels was headed over there. And
they're
obviously
all
he's
of
headed
our road crew, shop foreman, they're, except for 4 people in our shop, they're taking everybody else.
Wow.
So we set up the 23 car.
That was the undertone that I was catching, at least just as much as we've been paying attention to this thing now, as close as we've gotten to it, thanks to this, whatever it is we do every week.
What have you?
Yeah. I mean, it just so, and it also, the other undertone that I detected there was that, Christopher Bell is probably not in a JGR car, for next year if all had gone well for you, because he would have been in your car.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was in fact, Coach and I started talking about that during the shutdown, and because they were planning on Christopher being over here, and Christopher was planning on being over here, and so it was COVID just changed things. So we had gone into it planning with him being the second year here. Because if you look at it, when you pay for the rookie in a driver, you want to get the benefit out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we spent a lot more on bodies and chassis than anticipated, you know, because Chris was a rookie driver. So you want to benefit from that going into the second season. You just don't want to. I hate to say this, but you don't want to give somebody else that benefit
Right.
of your experience.
Right.
It's kind of like the T-shirt. Paid for it. I got it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and there's, I mean, you can capitalize quite a bit on a rookie because a rookie's automatically going to get more attention anyway, because they're running for something that is a little bit different than the Cup, but they're still going to get that attention of, oh, who was the top running rookie today? Oh, that was Christopher Bell. Well, who's he driving for? Levine Family Racing. That's going to help you sell your sponsorship inventory. And then also, if he's as good as we all think he's probably going to be, he's probably teaching your team about how to make those cars go faster from a driver perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes and no. I was really pleased and kept our guys' head up because Cher and I would drive to North Carolina a couple of times during the shutdown. Once we started back racing, keeping our guys' head up because we would have a fast car on the track, but something would happen, spin out, hit a wall, something would happen, so the guys and us want to make sure they get the credit. Our people in our shop and our road crews, they put together tremendous cars for us this year. And it was just other things that happened beyond their control. And it was continually, hey guys, keep putting the cars together the way you are. It'll work out. We'll get the finishes that we deserve because that's one of the things I really prided ourselves over the years. We've had one piece fall off of our car in 10 years of racing, but an axle come out in Sonoma back before we started going full time. Wow. And yourself, stuff fall off of cars, good cars all the time.
Yeah.
But we actually never had a part fall off of our cars, except for that in 10 years.
Yeah.
So really proud of our shop and the guys and Craig and everybody putting together. So the guys did their part. It was just happened to be some things happened beyond Christopher's control. A lot of things was in his control. And there was 3 other good rookies racing on the track with him this year also.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we've had years where, I won't make fun of the sponsor, but we had the gas station boner pill car win the rookie of the year a few years back. And that guy's nowhere near racing anymore. So, we didn't need any more reason to root for Bubba because we think Bubba's a great story, but knowing that we're going to watch that 23 car run around the track, and it's going to look like 95 is like shadowed over it. That's pretty cool.
That
just gave us one more reason to root for him.
Yeah, and I wrote this down as we were talking. The pride in having those great cars, you can feel that while you're saying what you're saying there, and then the legacy of being able to have a part in this 23 car and the Bubba Wallace and Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin thing is, that's pretty neat. One thing I did want to ask too is you've mentioned the next gen car a couple times and throughout this past week, I think it was Truex and Kurt Busch, I believe that were testing that out. Truex saying it does everything a little bit better. But since you've had so much experience with it and y'all been planning on it, what is your take on the next gen car?
They've spent a lot of time and money and effort, and it's going to change the way we race because, as you well know, top 20, and you're right, top 20 is very difficult to get to. Mm-hmm. You just can't take old chassis and old bodies and parts and pieces to run top 20. You just can't. But still 21, 22, 23, 24, that ain't bad either. You're beating some good cars if you do that. Well, now everybody has to buy this new car. And, look at the 32 car and the 96 car. I think Daniel said they had chassis that were running was 2012.
I saw that too. Yep.
Wasn't that what he said? And those were Toyota chassis that they were running because they couldn't get any newer Toyota chassis. And I'm not going into the whys and whatever, but they couldn't. Mm-hmm. So there, Marty was doing the best he could with what he could get. But now if he's able to afford it, and they're not going to be cheap cars, and I think you can only have, 6 cars in your stable with the new 6 or 8 cars. But still, you're going to be looking at several $1 million per year, about $3.5 million, I think we've figured, for a stable of cars for a year. And for some of the teams that are running now to do that every year, they ain't gonna be able to do it. So whereas some people now take the old chassis and bodies with the charter and make money in the back, they really make money. They don't, the engine isn't the engine that we have in our car or the Hendrix engine or the RCR engine, but it's an engine and it qualifies and it runs. They go out and they do what they can and they make money because of what they're spending. Now you're not going to be able to do that. That car is going to cost you $250,000 no matter what.
Wow.
Right, because you don't have an option but to buy exactly what they're,
This is where everybody's going to that place and pick up their car. So it's going to change it. And I'm just been thinking the last couple of days is that they started testing and, wow, so what is really, we weren't worried what it was going to look like with us, but what is it going to look like out there for a lot of other teams? That it's going to be difficult to come up with that money up front to buy those cars because there's none of them out there. Everything you'll be getting is new.
That's a good point too.
12 chassis. You're going to be spending, okay, give me $250,000 and I'll give you a car or parts and pieces to get the car. And then let's put a $100,000 engine in it. Okay.
Right.
Good grief.
There's a lot of this that, I wouldn't say fledgling fans because most people that are into this sport are paying a lot of attention to it. But I think the business piece of it is something that is kind of missed every time there's a decision that's made. And I try to pay enough attention to that so I can respond to it as intelligently as possible. But yeah, I mean, an engine lease is $100,000 a race. Like what?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But that's what we pay. You talking about going back to the word first of the show where you call me stupid.
For the record, I'm not.
I think we just supported what you said about yourself.
I've looked at it over the past several months, saying, where and what and where did I have an opportunity to, for lack of a better term, get out. And I should have saw the handwriting on the wall. The charter system was being talked about and the RTA had been formed, let's say. And had several meetings. And it was for the full-time team owners initially. And I remember they invited the Woods brothers and us to a meeting about the charter. Wasn't approved yet by NASCAR and the team owners. And, we knew what you had to do and essentially knew who was going to get them. And because they had just arbitrarily, those that had run full time for the previous 3 years or whatever it was, we'll get them and the rest of them won't. Well, we were automatically excluded because we were still running part-time and so was Lynn and Eddie Woods. And so it's like, well, why don't you do something going forward and let's kind of compete for them? But they didn't do that. But I stood up in that very meeting, first one was that, and stupid Bob mouths off and says, "Gentlemen, I came here to race. Y'all can do what you want to, whatever, but I came here to race, not do this, that, and the other. And that's why I'm here. I didn't come here to join a club. I didn't come here to all this other. I came to race and to do the best I could."
Yeah. And
they eventually approved it. We were on the outside looking in. So whereas 36 of them were given to teams, we had to lease one the very first year or get out because the pay was changed so dramatically. You couldn't afford to run in an open car. We couldn't afford to run in an open car. And so at that point in time, because I saw that NASCAR can just randomly change, make, and change your whole means of operation overnight, and you have very little to say about it, was when I probably should have said, wait a minute, this doesn't fit my personality of just arbitrarily changing the way we do and operate, and you have no say in it. Mm-hmm. I look at it, we put on the show. There's 36 cars that go out there with charters now, or we say 40, that go out and to race every weekend, that probably cost close to $20 million for a weekend, and we're racing for $2 million purse. That ain't really smart. And I'm not sure why we do it. But at that juncture, prior to that, we were making it. We were paying for our racing. Some was out of our pocket, but we were making it work in learning. But when that came about, it drastically changed. And as Marty knows what he's trying to race for in open and some of the other teams. But Marty's really trying to race, and there's other people just running around, putting laps on and collecting a purse.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if that's what NASCAR wants, that's what they got. Those of us who want to race and be competitive, it's very difficult for us too, in the business model, the sponsorship model, and what we have to do and how we have to do it, particularly now with COVID. And COVID's not going to go away overnight. We got 1 million cases here in Texas. We're one of the top in the country. And now the states that are sparse, bigger and more sparse, they're getting it and it's catching up. Mm-hmm. So it's not a pretty sight. I think we're like 10 million cases currently, and Texas got 1 million of them. Yeah. So it's not over, and sponsorship ain't going to come back like it was. So if we and I still say we in NASCAR, so we haven't closed yet on the deal. We're close. We don't change the revenue, the sponsor, the cost model, all those things. It's going to be, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
Because you just can't change the cost. You got to change the revenue also.
Yeah.
It's not a one-sided problem.
That's what you hear in business. If I can't control the top line, then I'll control the bottom line. and eventually it can't, it can't work no more. Or maybe I'm just saying the backwards, whatever it is.
Yeah, it catches up with you.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen a lot of this in the industry that I work in, Bob. It's a roll good industry, and everybody wants to drop weight because that's what drops the costs. And I'm like, one day we're just going to be rolling up air and just selling air.
Air. Oh, man. It's been we've been here well over an hour now, and Bob, I appreciate the time. One thing that I wanted to close us out with here is last week we talked with Jay Busby here in Atlanta about the Masters tournament. Is that something that are you into golf at all, Bob?
I was. In fact, I probably still got 5 sets of golf clubs or 4. But in the last 5 years, I've had 3 back surgeries. And 3, 4, and 5 are fused with 6 screws, 2 plates, a cage.
Goodness.
And it's very difficult. It was hard enough just to get around the garage and do all the walking we did. I haven't got back on the golf course, but I love. Sharon and I used to travel around the world going to golf courses and playing. But we haven't in the last 5 or 6 years.
Well, you've got some time now. Maybe we go.
I haven't got any money now, but I got some time now.
Well, if you got empty wallet,
you might be playing at the local goat run.
Yeah. Hey, whatever it takes.
Yeah. If you got an empty wallet, it's tough to hit the club. But yeah, the local goats run, or what's the other one say? Cow pasture.
We got cow pastures with gopher holes. Life is good.
Yeah, exactly. But Sherwin, last week we talked with Jay Busby, and Dustin Johnson was among our top, but holy mackerel, he just went out and said...
He ran away.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
Sherwin,
yeah, he said, "I'll show you."
Yeah.
I mean, they were obviously they had to do some weird, crazy stuff with the timing because they were going to bump up against daylight, which has never been an issue at the Masters because it's always been after daylight savings time in the spring. So they, the Masters is 3:30 in the afternoon, and the Masters is pretty much it's over.
Oh yeah, at 3:30 they're exchanging jackets. Yeah. But crazy deal with DeChambeau, who we talked about last week, who come out there and big hitter and whatnot, but ended up finishing -2 and 34th compared to -20, meaning that's a stroke a hole for at least one round, but across three rounds.
Crazy, isn't it?
It's wild how that plays out. That was a crazy Masters. But hey, Dustin Johnson, he left no room for questions.
Yeah, no doubter.
Mm-hmm.
No doubter. And of course, he got a nice little hug from Paulina after it was all over. She was probably bigger news than him.
No kidding.
I didn't watch any of that. I stayed away from it.
Oh, man.
Oh, you know how people be doing.
Yeah. Well, Bob, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you again, and we hope to do it one more time. We call it our PETM PhD episode. We get our bachelor's, master's, and PhD on the third try, so we'll have you come in and defend the thesis at some point.
I appreciate it, guys, and appreciate your time, and just good luck in 2021.
All right, you too, Bob. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, talk to y'all later.
See ya.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, Sherwin, it is it's the end of the show. What can I say? We got all kinds of stuff now that we'll be able to talk about next week. So y'all be listening out. We're gonna have a blast. Let's do this. Let's start closing it down. Sherwin, why don't you tell the folks where they can find us?
Yeah, you can find us in basically every place, just at PETM Podcast, or just search PETM Racing Podcast all over your Googles. I'm at Pregame Engineer on Twitter and at Andrew L. Sherwin on Instagram.
And y'all know where to find us, PETMPodcast.com, at PETM Podcast on Twitter. And we'll have, again, we have plenty to talk about next week. I wrote a whole show sheet worth of stuff, which means like 2 paragraphs of things, but guaranteed to be fun. As always, I'm Rusty Wallace at Tailgate Mayor on Twitter. Can't wait to see y'all again next week, and have a happy week, happy weekend. See ya. Here we go.
Boom.
Man.
Just like that, 70 minutes.
No kidding. And I was, it happens every daggum time, Sherwin, where like I had a late start. I cobbled together some show notes. I thought, hey, these are pretty good topics to hit on. And I could have written, I actually like put some asterisks next to all the topics we didn't hit, just so that I can look next week and make it a lot easier on me to fill it up then.
Sure. I think it might end up just being us next week, which
so
maybe is good since we got all that silly season stuff we got to still hit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's well, I don't want to spoil it or spill it or whatever, but we got some neat stuff. The big one of the big ones for me, we'll talk about Jamie Little. And I'll say it next week on the show, but it's like this is such a big milestone. First female to have a play-by-play in a national touring series. But to me, it almost just felt like a natural progression, And I'll talk about it next week. But we talk about things like, or we talk to people. Sorry, I'm trying to do IT stuff while talking. I'll stop. But we talk to people like Jeff Striegel, and I think of Jeff Striegel as what he calls himself, or maybe he doesn't call himself, but as he's known, the voice of NASCAR there, and MRN, the voice of NASCAR, right? And I feel like Jamie is a voice of NASCAR. Like it feels like maybe 30 years ago, you hear a female on NASCAR, and you might turn around. I'm not saying you're going to react negatively necessarily, but you might go, huh, what's that all about? But now it's like, yeah, absolutely. That's she just feels like NASCAR to me, you know? I think that's cool that we can say that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think you can look towards Chris Devoda as sort of paving the road in a lot of ways for these ladies that are doing the TV stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's been ladies writing about race cars for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But Shannon Spake hosting a daily TV show on Fox. Lindsay Zarniak, when she hosted the pre-race when TNT still had 6 races,
Mm-hmm.
that was a big deal. That there was a woman doing that role, and so I'll go in. I think I already announced this last week, but I'll say it again. In our continued support of women in racing and STEM and engineering disciplines and science disciplines in racing, we're going to talk in 2 weeks to Ms. Kate Ertman again.
Yes.
About a topic that she wanted to come back on the show and talk about. So we're going to do a deep dive on fuel mileage.
Yes. Can't wait. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, so that'll be December 1st.
Excellent. Let's see. Get this thing saved down and get us.
What do I don't even have anything after dark, I don't think. Although there's been a whole new crowd of people I've started playing with on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I saw the funniest thing I've seen, and I can't tell you when. Posted by the husband of one of the ladies that's in this group that loves to play the gift wars stuffs and all that.
Oh yeah,
I sent you the picture. I mean,
yeah,
y'all go find it. It's adult content for sure, but it's really funny.
Man, yeah, that's fun. I've seen, despite the or maybe in spite of, or whatever we call it, of this political season and all that stuff, we are getting some of the funniest like memes and gifs and all that stuff lately. I've been having a blast.
Well, people are sitting at home being creative, you know. They got so much more time on their hands.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And there's some really creative people out there.
Yeah. So I've been enjoying that at least. Well, I think we're about clean and clear on the old YouTube, so I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. Appreciate y'all hanging out, and hope you enjoyed hearing what Bob had to say as much as I did. I really was. I mean, it's absolutely honest that my initial reaction was, oh my gosh, what is Leavine Family Racing doing? They're on the up and up, and to hear what we heard tonight, it all makes sense, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bob, now he's got a little bit more freedom to speak. Hopefully, when he comes back to defend his thesis, that we can dive even deeper into some of the darker territories of where he was operating in the garage, and get some of those details like he shared today that he probably wasn't able to share with us a year ago when he didn't realize that he was going to be done racing after 2020.
Yeah. So y'all. Can't wait to talk to y'all again next week. We got plenty that we'll be talking about, and even if it's just us, we'll talk about beer, we'll talk about racing, like always. So until then,
all right, y'all.
Later.
Go listen to Lap Traffic. It's already posted.
Yes.